I promise you, they are much easier to build than we make them look in that video. It doesn't take anywhere near as long. When you're alone, you don't have anyone else trying to do anything. You can just look at the instructions, build it, throw on some jams. That's how I did it when I built this one. We didn't quite do it that way as you saw there in the studio. It took a little bit more. Of course, we want to thanks out to Max Nomic for giving us these chairs. And of course, you can go get yourself one too. It's a very, very comfortable chair. And I can say that with a lot of certainty. I've been sitting in it for literally over a year now. It's kind of crazy to think about that. And it is absolutely something that you want to use. You want to use code SMITEMAX when you go to make sure that you can get that. And it'll make your life just a little bit better to have something comfortable to sit in, because at least at this point, and Aggro, I'm sure you can attest this as we bring you in, I haven't been doing much other than sitting in this chair as of late, and so it definitely does kind of suit all of the needs that I have, and so far most of those needs have been getting back into the SPL, trying to kind of smooth transition here as we've watched it, and today has kind of started off with a little bit of a surprise. The Valkyries looked pretty solid earlier on, but now it's up for the Kings to try and see if we're going to have an interesting day tomorrow and keep a second spot tie going on by catching up to the Dragons here as they face the Warriors.
Yeah, maybe the little bit of a break, it clearly helped the Valkyries in some ways, and maybe the same could be said for the Warriors, who have also been struggling, in a fairly similar position in the standings, and of course in situation, having multiple players playing on that European ping. Maybe they've taken this time to figure out what they want to be playing and how they want to be playing it, because I think that no one expects the Oni Warriors to be 1-5 coming into this season at this point of the year. They've got too much talent to have a record like that, regardless of their situation. So I'm excited to see what they're going to do.
And that's the thing that is interesting, but it's not going to be easy for them coming into this. Looking at their opponents, the Kings, as of right now, they're on a 3-win streak in the last 3 sets that they've played. They've been very successful versus the 4-loss streak there for the Warriors that you had highlighted 1-5. So they've got things going up and up, I would say, for the Kings. And the thing that was a wild card, I mean, I even said this, I think we were talking to PBM sometime in the last week. I mentioned it to him that I described this team as like what I thought is something we'd put together for a charity event. It kind of felt like we grabbed one player from each team and just threw them together. But they've come together incredibly well, and Netrioid, I think, deserves a lot of credit because he is not the kind of person that I thought would mesh well with this team, but seems to be seamlessly fitting in.
He's played really well. I mean, really the whole Kings team has. They've really played the map super well. They've been in the right positions. I've loved the way that they've been willing to innovate. I mean, we saw Twig with this Blink Sunder build out of the jungle, prioritizing early spectral armor. I don't know if that'll still be the case with the arrows getting nerfed and everything like that, but this team's always willing to experiment. They're willing to play the map a lot differently, and because of that, they're a lot of fun to watch. And don't forget, we're sitting here saying, don't worry too much about the Valkyries. They've got players on the U-Ping. And the same to be said for the Oni Warriors. How about the Camelot Kings? They have the similar situation. A lot of their players playing from Europe, and they're playing some of the highest level Smite in the league right now. So don't forget about that when you're giving this team their praise.
And I'm really excited to see what they're able to do. I will say some bad news there for Genetics. And every single one of those highlights, he was playing Ymir. Ymir with that wall nerf. Just a cooldown, but 2 seconds on it at max. Like, you're going to feel that one, so maybe something taken out of their wheelhouse or a tool removed from the toolbox. It'll be interesting to see how they adapt to it, of course, with Gilgamesh coming in as well. The Kings have been the team that caught me by surprise, and I've been waiting for that exact moment to happen with the Warriors, right? Like, this was a team, like you had said, on paper, this career, the history of every single player on this team should theoretically be up towards the top, but they haven't quite been able to get there. And Vote, 1.7 KDA has been able to play very cleanly, but something hasn't meshed as a team. Where do you see them coming together?
I think the main area they need to work on still is their mid 3v3, because that was really the strength of the 3-man core of Nika, Dardes, and Vote. Was it that Dardes and Vote, Nika and Vote were such good side laners, and that a lot of times that team was playing through their mid 3v3 core. That just hasn't been the case for them so far here in this season. So what can they change there? Can Dardes and Fred continue to work better together, and how does Neil fit into that equation? I think they'll get it. These guys are too good to not get it. There's no way they don't eventually. It's just a matter of time in my mind.
Well, that's the thing that was really interesting. It was kind of the question mark, I think, for all of the teams that kind of started to gravitate towards the bottom four was how long until we really get to see them step up. For some of them, we've seen them step up at least for a set. Scarabs, notably, the Valkyries across a couple of games. So maybe it's time for the Warriors. We've actually got Vote ready for an interview. And Vote, I mean, I've got to ask you, you've had a couple of weeks off. Granted, it has not been a great couple of weeks. I'm sure you haven't been grinding Smite. I know I haven't, but have you been able to spend some time as a team and kind of grow and flourish into a position you feel a lot better for the last half of the phase?
Well, in scrims, we've been trying to be more proactive instead of just like bending over, is the easy way to put it. I don't know if that's like, the best way to put it, but.
Hey, Vote, listen, I've learned at this point, I've learned better than to ask you about builds in particular, because the answer is always, I had enough gold. But how much of a switch up in general do you think we'll see in your role with all the changes we've seen?
I don't think there'll be any changes. I don't know. I've not really played about with builds so much, but I think just getting free gold is just better than not getting free gold. So I think I'm just going to go Arrow anyway.
Well, it sounds like you've got that part figured out. And when it comes down to it, Aggro had mentioned like the team 3v3, kind of the mesh between you guys, specifically in mid and bringing in like Neil, things like that. How do you feel that the team and the kind of that core in the middle is going to do? And I guess also your matchup versus Netruoid, like where do you see being important in this map?
Honestly, I think it's dueling. I don't know. I think Nika and Harry are going to be kind of the same person. They both play similar gods, play similar styles. Big man's just playing like snipe gods at the moment. Maybe it's changed the last couple of weeks off, I don't know. All that is just complaining about ping. Fred's complaining about ping. So.
Well, hey, it sounds like you guys have figured something out, and then I'm excited to see what you're going to do coming into this. It's not going to be an easy match, so good luck in your games. Go get ready for them, and thanks for your time, man.
Thanks.
Aggro, I mean, it sounds like he's got his life figured out, right? Free gold's better than no gold, right? So he's going at least to be looking towards his Ornate Arrow. Maybe that's a little bit of a dupe. Maybe he's throwing that one to get us off the scent. But this is a matchup that if the Kings, first off, if they win, they tie up for second place and make tomorrow a lot more convoluted. But if they lose, I think it's a bigger thing for the Warriors and kind of a showcase of what they've maybe been able to do these last couple of weeks and kind of bring themselves together. Do you think, I mean, 2 weeks of time, we've seen a lot change during play. Yeah. Is it enough time in scrims to really like change things up, or can I throw that out the window and just assume the last time we saw the Warriors, we're getting kind of a similar version?
I do think that the amount of time that has passed certainly can make a big difference for a lot of teams, and I think the Warriors certainly are included in that. I think that I'd almost expect that we don't see a gradual improvement from the Warriors, that it's probably struggling, and then all of a sudden they just get it. It clicks, and they're in the right position. It's just a matter of waiting for that click to happen. So maybe it has. In the last few weeks, I would not be surprised to see them go on a big win streak at some point this year. But until that happens, I think that they're in some trouble. And thinking about the amount of time that's passed and all that kind of stuff, the Kings are a team that they theory craft really well. They're going to experiment. Teams that might make changes based on what's going on in the meta, I think the Kings are near the top. So I'm excited to see what they've cooked up for us.
Well, so far, they seem to be focused on something interesting. I was wondering if that was going to make it through and where the Kings would value it, but it turns out that the Oni Warriors are going to ban it away. Ymir banned off. And, you know, this is actually, we didn't get to talk about it much last set because he just was devoid of everything. Do you think that Ymir wall cooldown is enough? I mean, since you can cancel it early, theoretically, it's not going to make too big a difference, right?
Yeah, I don't think that Ymir is gone from the meta by any stretch. I think that he's just not first pick anymore. I think that you might have to pick your spots a little bit more carefully with him. You know, pick him against compositions that don't deal with that wall particularly well, because you don't get as many shots at using it in the midst of the team fight. So you've got to make the shots that you do get count. I still think Ymir is a third overall type of pick at the very worst. I mean, he's still a really strong god.
Tiamat makes it through Banzia Moja up there, notably where we typically would have seen her. But as of yet, there is no not Heimdall, there's no Gilgamesh. There is, in fact, a Heimdall that's coming through. Now, Aggro, you know, there's always some new god bias, and so I would argue that anybody who's watched Smite, and I will even throw myself in this category, over the last year, I see Tiamat Gilgamesh, and I'm starting to sweat for the Warriors. I don't care what they have over there. That seems like it's going to definitely feel oppressive, to say the least. But how do they actually work together? I feel like I've seen a lot of Tiamat. I've seen a little bit of Gilgamesh in across streams, but I don't know that I've ever actually seen them play together.
Yeah, I like their synergy quite a bit because, of course, Gilgamesh is going to lay down the ring, the winds, and lock people in that cage, and then Tiamat can drop her own tornado inside that, and even though it takes a while for that knockup to come through, Gilgamesh is keeping you locked into a very small area for a pretty long period of time. So it adds actual CC to Tiamat's kit in some ways. I think they work really, really well together. You can stun them into another stun one way or the other. I like the synergy between Tiamat and Gilgamesh in the mid 3v3, but I don't know that this Gilgamesh is guaranteed to go into the jungle. This is certainly, Twig has never shied away from playing a frontline warrior in the jungle. That's certainly a possibility for him, but it wouldn't surprise me to see Variety pull it out in solo either.
Well, Fafnir, talk about rising up out of nowhere. He's going to get locked in here. Although, I have to give credit, like Inbound, Jake, they were playing a lot of this Fafnir towards the end of last year. Kind of had some repercussions throughout the league in Season 7. Nice to see that he's come back. And that might mean some good things for them, but they're on completely different teams, so we'll ignore them until tomorrow when they play the Morgan locked in there for the Warriors as they ban out Wukong, Kukulkan, a little more focused towards the solo lane. Daji, notably, recently got buffed in that 8-5 patch as well. Taken away here from the Warriors, potentially looking at another assassin here. Specifically, I guess the Morgan coming in, like the top 3 for the Warriors looks like a really good draft. How's it going to be able to hold its own so far against the top 3 for the Kings?
They've got good CC, they've got good fight potential, they're just strong gods in and of themselves, but it's a little bit more team fight focused. I wonder how well you're going to be able to team fight up against Tiamat and Gilgamesh, who I think are very, very good at that stage of the game. I wonder who Dardes is going to be transforming into the vast majority of the time. Is Gilgamesh the type of pick that he likes? How comfortable is he on that selection? Yeah. I think that on its face value, it looks like a good transform to me. You've got mobility, you've got a little bit of tankiness, you've got CC, you've got it all, but has Dardes practiced on that pick? You got to be able to be comfortable on that Gilgamesh for sure. This makes sense to me. Going with something that is a guaranteed slam dunk transformation every single team fight. This is the only Warriors trying to match what I think the strength of the Kings composition already is, which is team fighting. Now you've got Terra Ultimate, which is already probably the best team fight ultimate in the entire game, and now you've got 2 of them. So now you really have to force the enemy team to make really, really perfect plays in order to not get steamrolled in the team fights.
I'm looking at potentially how the Mighty have fallen on her, who was potential ban, first pick for a long time. Now, maybe not even getting locked in here. We'll have to see. The Terra, like you had said, something that's going to be very potent for him. Morgan locked in over there on her does come through there for the Kings, so that's going to be on her v Heimdall, as well as the Fafnir v Terra. Interesting matchups for that. This Osiris, something that not a lot of teams can talk about, but I feel like the Kings can. How do you feel, like, just this pick in general, how do you feel about, but also his matchup into King Arthur?
I'm fine with the Osiris. I don't think that he dominates the lane like he once did, but he's still solid enough in the laning phase. If you get ahead on him, he still feels very, very oppressive, and he sits on carries well. And Morrigan has trouble against gods that can immune the stun and then stick onto her really easily. And that Judgment tether, even after you stealth, you're still tethered. You can just follow the rope to go right where the Morrigan is going. So I love the pickup against the Morrigan in particular. I do wonder if it's going to be for Variety, who's played it a lot during his career, or Captain Twig, who has also played it a lot during his career, particularly in the jungle. I think that this is really a flex pick. The Kings, I'm sure they know exactly where it's going. I don't think that they have any questions, but I don't know. I don't know what they've been practicing so far in the lead up to the SPL resuming, so I'm excited to see where this Gilgamesh is going to go alongside the Osiris.
Well, it's been some interesting bounces for the hover. If you haven't been able to watch, it was Kali, then Camazotz. Now it's hovering over Bastet. And, of course, neither 3 of those get locked in here. It ends up being the Nemesis. And this is going to bring back the discussion. We kind of got to see it come to fruition with Mercury in the last game. But with Shell not being as impactful, in fact, to the point where it's not even getting picked up, Sunder has been that first opt-in for a lot of these supports and pretty much anybody that would have gotten Shell prior. is Nemesis as an auto attacker going to be more prevalent? Are we still going to see more, maybe more specifically, ability-based builds? There's the word. My mind couldn't find it there for a second. Trying to get, I guess the feel for her. We've been seeing her more often than not go for those katanas, pick up that in-hand attack. Is she going to be able to flourish now that there's no shell to really help shut her down?
I think so. I think the Nemesis is going to really continue to rise. And if you've watched these Oni Warriors games the last few weeks of play, they really prioritize this Nemesis for Cuvo Fred. So I'm not surprised that that's where they end up with their 10th pick. I expect Nem to rise pretty quickly in this jungle tier list. She just brings everything you could need outside of that hard CC, of course, but she duels really, really well. She wins her 1v1s. She can snowball games really effectively, and even when she falls behind, that ultimate is still always relevant for the rest of your team at the very least. So I do think Nemesis is going to be one of those premier junglers more than likely as we move forward.
Well, this was a matchup in my mind that was going to be a lot more heavily in favor of the Kings coming into this, and they get, look, I'm going to be honest, Tiamat Gilgamesh is still really, really convincing me they're going to have an easy time with this one. But I will say the Warriors, at least from what you've said, it sounds like this is one of their best chances, if not from comfort, but also just from draft style, at being able to fight back against the Kings. Are there a lot of openings for them, or does it come down to specifically team fights? Because team fights looking pretty good on the right-hand side.
I don't think the Warriors are going to try and step on the gas early. I mean, maybe if Nika gets ahead over there in solo, they start leaning on blue buffs. But for the most part, you're really looking for the Morrigan to just use that transform as the early aggression. It will make plays around that Changeling ultimate. And when it's down, we're playing really, really passively and just holding on to that trump card come late game of double Terra ult. Now, I'd hope for a Cursed Ankh upgrade here from Genetics. I'd certainly expect it either from him or from Twig or from Variety. One of them is going to get it, because if they don't, I just don't see a path for them to win these team fights. A lot of times against things like Terra ult, the best thing you can do is force them to use it and then disengage. And that's doubly true against the Morrigan, because not only are you using her ultimate, but you're putting her in a much more vulnerable state. Morrigan without ultimate late game is not really a threat at all. Kings have to play these team fights a little bit more slowly and patiently. Even if they start to win a team fight, if we see a double Terra ult hit all 5 members of their own team, you have to win that fight so hard that you're not returning any damage at all on your end, because otherwise that ultimate will make too much of an impact. I want to see them be a little bit measured in these engagements. Take it a little bit slow, try and bait Neoma, try and bait Dardes in order to use these ultimates preemptively, reset, and then go again in the team fights. Because once those ultimates are down, I think that the Kings' team fight is just far better.
I might have nightmares about double Terra ult coming up here. I'm going to throw this one out there before we jump into the game. Niels, 5 kills from 300. Let's see if he can hit that threshold for this, and let's see if the Warriors have what it takes here in game number 1.
Thank you so much, Gore and Aggro on the desk. Myself, Hindu Man, joined by Mifflin on the cast for this one. And Miff, this is a very European affair, outside of, Netrioid for the most part, who's like an honorary European at this point, I would say. This is going to be an interesting game, because we do get to see Tiamat and Gilgamesh on the same team.
And to keep in line with that thread, Hindu, this is a very European draft. I don't expect either one of these teams to really be pushing the envelope throughout the early. Aggro already highlighted on the desk, the Oni Warriors likely going to be waiting for that late game phase where they can use that double Terra ultimate, or even potentially double Retribution if they so choose. But the Kings are along that same trend. They're going to scale incredibly well come late game. Big Man Ting's going to pressure the entirety of the map. Genetics going to turn Netrioid into even more of a chainsaw come late, as well as Variety. I think that both of these squads could be well suited, just kind of resting on their laurels until the 20-minute mark.
Well, starting the game, nothing too crazy there. The duo lane ended up starting the usual method of mid and hunter, starting the red and transition to purple. Junglers sort of their own speed buffs, and then blues for the solo laners too. This is Cyrus pick though. Ryan was kind of talking about that on the desk a little bit here, Miff, as well. I do kind of like this into the composition. I think it's going to be good against the likes of, Cubo, Fred, and Dardes, or well, more specifically, Dardes and Bo on this Heimdall and Morrigan. I think that tether could really come into play.
It really could. Just makes it that much easier to trace out Dardes once he does go into the stealth.
Yeah.
I am surprised to see Variety go towards Bluestone, which recently got an HP 5 nerf. I thought potentially we'd see a slight resurgence from these Death Toll pickups out of solo, but instead does want that additional poke ability. And it's been working out for him. Nika drops down to about 20% HP just a couple moments ago, working through a ton of his potions.
And now with that too, just checking in with the builds. Obviously mid lane is a little bit of a difference there in terms of pen focus versus potentially someone else. But that Impale on Vote is going to cause him problems after the horrific emblem. But great use there of the actual movement from that ability. I've forgotten the name of it. Oh my god, it's been a minute, Myth. The Bifrost.
Look,
That's
Chair
the
2,
one.
yeah, Bifrost. You got it. Yeah. Well, you got Horrific. That's better.
You moved.
Yeah, we're all there.
I know, right? That's easy. Horrific's easy. No problem. But I didn't like the little combination that you saw at Netroid and Genetics combining well early on. Vote didn't even use the beads in that one either, interestingly enough. But still managed to survive and resustain thanks to the potions. And that's going to force Neil back in lane for a moment.
It will. I'm expecting that same level of aggression from the Kings inside a duo lane. I said earlier that they can wait until the 20-minute mark, and that still rings true. But when you lock in on her, you lock in the ability to just jump in on waves, jump in consistently, try and drag maybe the jungler from Oni Warriors over here, keep playing on this tower line. Makes it a little bit easier for the rest of the Kings to play aggressively. Neilma dashing forward, finds a little bit of poke.
Speaking of aggression, though, look at that left-hand side. Twig invading the red buff on the left-hand side of the map. May rotate now towards this duo lane that is still scrapping at the moment, but with the Warriors being under the tower, bit tricky to look for a dive, but what they can do is strip further buffs away. Purple now being looked at on this left-hand side and taken away there by the Camelot Kings. So just a small lead at the moment. However, on the right-hand side, looks like Cuvo is making a bit of work with Nika towards this blue buff. And Variety's going to have to be careful here. Can he get his buff in time is the question. The answer is no. Cuvo Fred picks it up and walks away.
That looked to me like a Bluestone tick steal from Nika.
I thought
That's just
so
an
too.
unfortunate situation.
Yeah.
But the Camelot Kings come out slightly ahead. 2 buffs stolen on the left side, whereas the Warriors only able to pick up 1. But 1 buff invade makes not for a lead. It's what you're able to do with those cooldowns. Expect the Kings to continually try to find pressure.
Blinking from Nika, pressure on Variety again. Variety doesn't panic too much though, can't really do much about the poke he's receiving, but he will survive for now. Will force a trip back to base. However, I was going to mention he has gone teleport this game, Myth, as well. Is that expected because he's expected to be focused a little bit in this one, or is it more for rotations?
It could be for the focus towards his lane. If you take a peek at Cuvo Fred, this Retribution ultimate makes it pretty easy to shut down Osiris, especially when you've got a nice CC center from Nika. Take him up to Avalon, makes it very easy to position around him. But I think it's more so about his ability to rotate out of lane. They could try and utilize his ability to rotate over to Gold Furies earlier on with this teleport in conjunction with Fafnir's second ability, just to try and blow out these neutral objectives pretty early on, which plays into the strategy that we're seeing on the board right now already. Greater Scorpion removed on the Gold Fury side.
Two of the probably best mid laners in the world right now competing in this one. Dardes versus Big Man Tings. Big Man Tings not necessarily slept on, but I think a lot of people have realized just how good he has become in this mid lane role after a few years ago transitioning from the support position, just like Dardes did once upon a time, funny enough.
Wow.
So very similar with those two and how those two have actually played through the series. But on this Tiamat, I'm excited to see what he can really do with it. For me, Myth, it's very much Tiamat's there for a lot of poke damage, and then eventually you have to commit to really make something happen.
Yeah, Tiamat at her best when she's able to jump into these team fights. Or if you want to go a much more passive style, it could just be that split push. Just drop your minions, the lizards, down one lane, and potentially win out on a team fight that way. Force the enemy team to respect his ability to split up the map, as Genetics trying to get subsequent purple buffs, but so hard to invade on Fafnir. Just got to stand between him and the hammer, and it's going to be that easy.
Does force him to lose a tiny bit of gold towards that tower, though, in terms of the tower taking the hits, and Anher got a bit of pressure there. He'll go back to base, though, Netroid, get his Devourer's Gauntlet online. And funny enough, talking about the supports real quick, I do like the adjustment Neilmar made here. He went for the boots rush with Reinforced. But wait a second, Gank in mid lane could be coming through. Horrific used. Dash in as well from the minion coming out from Tiamat, but the damage just off the mark. Still the dive going on as they look for Cuvo Fred, who's trapped inside the sandstorm of hell. And First Blood could be here and will be in favor of Big Man Tings. Dardes still in some trouble here in the mid lane too, though, but Genetics can't follow up any further as the First Blood goes the way of the Kings.
Good discipline from the Kings. You said it there. It looked to me like Dardes was in some trouble, but the Kings had already spotted out the rotation attempt from Neilma. Says, all right, look, we got First Blood, no reason to stick around, might as well back up.
Well, Root comes out from Neilma, but no follow-up available from Dardes, who wasn't really in the health bar to really make an impact. And obviously, Cuvo Fred coming back from base after his little tumble there earlier on. Good start from the Kings, though, Myth. This is similar to what we've seen out of them all season so far. They really are disciplined and playing as a unit once more.
They really are. I mean, It's not even a once more. These guys are brand new as a squad here, and they just come out looking so good together. They're utilizing their compositions incredibly well. They've been really splitting up the map, I think, due in large part to their shot caller. Genetics has been doing a very good job of just making sure they're constantly finding pressure throughout the map, and they've been really finding fruition for it.
Variety under a bit of pressure here. Did have the tether on Nika though, so won't be too dismayed by that situation. The stun came through as Neil was hovering around the mid. And going back to Neil again, Myth, he actually went for that reinforced Greaves rush and then picked up Benevolence later on, which I think is a good idea, you know, so you don't fall too far behind early as a support. Get your level 5 and then maybe, you know, look for helping out your team and sharing that farm up a bit more, and then eventually upgrading that to be very beneficial for the team.
Yeah, I think we saw Mike do that for the first time back in week 3. It's just a very interesting start because of how much pressure is on the support to make their presence known throughout the early. That ability to rotate out, you want to be out of the duo lane by the 4.5 minute or so mark, rotate in the mid and start to work that 3v3. So I think that this is a start that we're going to get very used to seeing in Season 8.
Well, so far, Genetics and Big Man combining well in this mid lane. Just trying to keep the pressure down, keep the consistent poke up, specifically using that primordial onslaught out from Tiamat after a hammer. And it's opened up a bit of a window for a bit more farm in the jungle as this greater Scorpion on the right-hand side taken down nice and early. Make sure that goes the way of them, and also they don't have to worry about Fire Giant for a while, as, you know, it's still very, very early days. No real surprise to see how this one's played out so far, and still balanced on a knife edge.
But the XP deficit that are starting to establish themselves on the map are pretty large. 2 levels for Big Man Tings already. Tells me that it's time for Big Man Tings to start getting involved in these team fights. He's got the ability now on this Tiamat to jump in and utilize that lead for that aggressive style. I want to see the Camelot Kings utilize that now. Use the lead while you have it. 8.5 minutes in, it's time to start looking towards this duo lane, towards the Gold Fury, and forcing the Warriors to take some fights.
At the moment, though, that Great Scorpion on Gold Fury's side is still available, so until that goes down, no Gold Fury up and active for them to look at. But is that where you want to see the Tiamat go? Is that where you want to see Big Man Tings go, to the left side of the map, or play through the mid lane and look for pressure on Dardes more, Myth?
I would like to see him, if he is making the rotations, head over towards left. If the strategy is to have someone else rotate in towards mid, you can continually try and pressure out Dardes. The only thing I don't want to see BMT doing is looking at Nika ever. I mean, this King Arthur already has reinforced Greaves, has Blink, pretty safe at this point.
Well, gank on the right side again onto Variety as Cubo Fred now rotates in as well.
Yikes.
Gets those extra protections, but he will use the Lord of the Afterlife to escape for the time being. Mid lane, meanwhile, though, you can see the pressure for a second that you can see being exerted by Big Man Tings and Twig in the area too. But it's all on a Warrior's way for a second as the blue buff now invaded. But Cubo's going to be careful because Twig's lurking. Tings was on the rotation too. Meanwhile, left-hand side, Genetics has just not left Vote alone.
No, just looking to find that pressure. If Genetics is able to force Vote back here, it could be an opportunity for the Camelot Kings to start to back up and look towards that Greater Scorpion. And BMT's just been doing this the entire time. So much pressure.
Tings. Stop it! Leave him alone! And Genetics might think about rotating around the back there, but the health bar on Neil a little bit too high, and Darda's still lurking, a little bit risky for that. But it just shows the pressure they're having to force Neil back again. Still only level 7 though, so not falling too far behind that of Genetics, who just hit level 8 after that red buff invade. But so far you can really see that Kings are controlling this left-hand side of the map very effectively. Red and purple invades, now the Great Scorpion. Whereas Warriors are finding small windows on the right-hand side towards that blue buff.
Yeah, operative word is small there. The Camelot Kings have been doing a very good job of establishing not only the gold lead, approaching 3,000 at this point, but also the experience is coming out ahead on their invades every single time. Sure, if they're not able to get the purple, well, they're forcing someone back to base. They're stripping away a red buff. They're rotating in a mid and forcing Dardes back as well. BMT has the second relic available to him. Should be able to get back to base, pick up that relic, and then get involved in a fight, make use of that huge power spike.
Speaking of Vote, still trying to go toe-to-toe with Netroid, but a 2-level deficit now with all these invades going on. Just trying to get as much farm as he can. And the abuse from Netroid, but it doesn't Fury! Oh, we can't land the last shot at all! Vote's jukebook's just too good for Netroid in that circumstance.
Yeah, I mean, is it the juke shoes? He landed, what, 2 spears of 8
Listen,
right there?
listen,
Netroid, a little bit of a fumble
You give him the
inside the
benefit
tower.
of the doubt, you know? You give him the benefit of the doubt. Like,
Alright,
he sidesteps right, you go left, you mess it up. You all do it in your games anyway. If I've seen you do it on stream too, don't even start, you know?
Well, I'm not a pro player. I'm Mifflin
That's
the
true, that's
caster.
true.
This is Netroid, the hope of Latin America. But for now, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt because my boss told me to. Is at least able to force the beads off a vote, which should make it a little bit easier to look towards the Gold Fury.
Well, like you said, the blue buff invaded on the right hand side. Now pressure again in mid lane, coming through from Tiamat and the Fafnir too. Trying to keep pressure on Neil more than anything else. Dardes just constantly forced out of lane. Will be forced to lose a couple of minions there. As one more time, it's Twig's turn to come over and say, hey, Vote, I know we've not got pressure over here, but I'm still going to come and take the purple away. It's not your jungle anymore.
Man, and it is just constant pressure from the Kings here. We're starting to see a rotation from Oni Warriors, a big 4-man stack on the left side, and Twig instantly deleted.
Yeah, great work there from Vote, honestly, under the circumstances. He rotates into that red buff. No real collapse from Kings there at all. Just a little bit greedy from Twig. And Oni Warriors really do make them pay. And Vote managed to get back to lane for most of his minions. Will lose that purple. But now with this man advantage here, look at this, Smith. Oni Warriors on the aggression, looking at the red buff.
Yeah, the turns are tabling, red buff stripped away, but BMT's damage is there, and Dardes with that dot applied cannot stealth.
He got knocked up as well, takes a lot of damage, does transform into the Gilgamesh, but he is very, very low. He'll get a bit of sustain off that camp at the back, but where can he go now? He leaps down. He's just going to end up sacking to somebody at some point, unless the sneakiness comes through.
No
Can
way.
he sneak away? The minions have found him! They gave away his position, and gives away his life to Big Man Tings, who's now got the second kill for the Kings on the board.
Meanwhile, Nika taking Variety to Avalon for potentially the 40th time this game. But with Dardes dead for 20 seconds, this could be, again, and I've been calling for it almost constantly, an opportunity for the Kings to look towards this Gold Fury. And it looks like it is going to be a rotation already. Fafnir and On Her making their rotation in. The only one of the Warriors in range to rotate in themselves is Neilma. Good luck.
Well, I mean, Desert Fury, pretty good for secure for the most part. If you can land the spears, you know, it should be a standing still target this time. Leaping towards Neil, though. Neil getting zoned away as the Desert Fury comes through. And Kings take the Gold Fury. Extends their lead now to around 4,000 gold at this point, Myth. 4K for me, you know, like midway through a game, ain't too bad. But at 13 minutes in, it's a little bit early, and there could be more problems for Bo, who gets impaled away from the Bifrost. Genetics again with these hammers connecting. The pressure is on, and the Kings are slowly but surely pulling away with this game. However, Twig in the jungle under some pressure now. Great rotation in from Nika. Follow-ups there from Neil too, and he's already down before he can land. Now it's Variety against 3. Should sustain himself up enough, however, with the fact he's got that Stone of Gaia to hold his ground. But he might have to walk away from the blue unless he gets lucky.
Oni Warriors found a strategy that works for him, and it's called solo pressure, but Variety, with the backup of Genetics, is trying to re-engage himself.
And the stun didn't really come through at the right time. The walls from Neil just good enough. There's a Fire Giant, will aggro for a second, but no real reason to continue the chase. Maybe Genetics will get frisky around this blue buff here, but he won't be there in time to do anything about that one. So with that, it settles down for a moment or two. And all the pressure really has been the left-hand side of the map, right? It's been very stalemated, but Genetics is still chasing Cuvo.
There's no world Cuvo falls here, right? Neilma rotates in just to make sure that Genetics can't get too frisky over here inside of those back camps, but does at least slow down the back from this Nemesis, slow down those power spikes as well. Camelot Kings have been playing incredibly confidently on the map, and it's been due in large part to this pressure out of the mid lane. BMT can do no wrong at this point, drops Neilma down to half health, and sets up the rest of his team to pick up the Pyromancer. Crucial objectives have been going the way of the Order side this entire match, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. This gold deficit is becoming stifling.
And when you actually look at the ability usage out of Big Man Tings in mid, he's focusing Neil Mob, but he's also using that Summon Beast, that giant dude that appears, gets a good stun off, and causes a lot of problems, what should I say, a long slow. 80% slow is really impactful in those situations to allow you to follow up with some damage. Neil's having a hard time having to go toe-to-toe with that level 16 Tiamat in the mid lane that has gone for the Chiron's coin that we've seen a little bit more of as of late. Chiron's coin, I should say, not Chiron's. It should be Chiron's, though, shouldn't it? We got Chronos Pen.
Karen's coin, it also just got a recent buff as well. I believe
Yeah.
10 more power added onto that one. So it's going to be an item that I think we see a little bit more so, or we're going to see a little bit more so
no.
both dying. Can't land the spheres though.
You don't need to because he's got the basics. See, give him the benefit. Cubo coming in though, looking for pressure on Netro, but Netro with a good Aegis buys himself a moment. Dardes was on the rotation too and gets zoned away by Genetics. Good work from the duo lane there, and now the collapse from Kings could be on. This tier 1 tower is very, very low, and 4 members of Kings are swarming onto the Oni Warriors front line, and this forcing them further back in the jungle again. Red buff is up in a moment or two's time, but it looks like they might continue to pressure for a tier 2 for a moment here at the same time as this red.
Yeah, they've got vision on Terra in mid. They watch Cuvo go back to base. Should be able to strip away this tier 2 tower pretty quickly, but it's taken them a little bit longer than I would have liked. The Oni Warriors have the rotation in.
And the tier 2 will fall down. Soon after that, it looks like we may end up seeing Dardes fall too. He tried to transform,
Yikes.
gets pulled back in by Gilgamesh. And that's 5-2 on the standings now. As Camelot Kings take a tier 2 tower, the gold lead stretches to 8,000 plus. And you can already see the pings on the right-hand side going, hey boys, we could start looking at fire with how this is going.
Yeah, might as well, right? Variety has been the only one under pressure from the Kings so far this game, and it has established a 1-level lead for the Warriors inside of solo, but at what cost? The Camelot Kings, the other 4 members, all incredibly far ahead at this point. Maybe a slight XP deficit for Twig, but itemization and gold across the board going to be favoring the Order side team. If they do force a fight around this Fire Giant, I believe the Kings should reset it and immediately try and dive deep into that backline. We've seen it time and time again. Dardes has just about 0 survivability. Might as well remove him from the fight.
Definitely see a lot of 4-level leads going on today in that Hunter role specifically. Pandaka had a good time of it against Emilito earlier on, and it looks like Netroid's having the same sort of way up against the vote with how this is playing out so far. In the solo lane though, I mean, we keep seeing this battle. Nika, every time we shoot it, I feel like Nika's ult in Variety, but no one's dying. Whereas in the mid lane and the jungle, bit of a different story. Big Man Tings, happy to get aggressive in mid again, looking towards Neil Mar, who hasn't picked up his second relic just yet after hitting level 12. Speaking of relics though, Myth, Ryan was suggesting a Cursed Ankh would be good from the Kings this game. But they've picked everything up they can do in relics, and they don't have one. They went for the Belt of Frenzy, which is upgraded on Genetics this game. How do you feel about that?
It feels like to me the Camelot Kings are trying to expedite their pace a little bit. That Frenzy pickup as well as the Horrific should help them out in these fights early on, but it does give the Oni Warriors a way back in. That sustain from Terra ult, 2 of them if you so choose, could turn around these fights come late, but 18.5 minutes in with a gold deficit as it is, I don't think it's going to come up.
Well, the drop kick off the mark from Captain Twig there actually saved the life of Cuvo Fred. That was one of my ranked games, that's for sure, where I see that happen. But it's at the same time as the Oni Fury does spawn, and now the Oni Fury is going to go down relatively quickly, uncontested here by the Oni Warriors, with a bit more pressure now available on the map. There's no tier 2 tower on the left, remember, so someone's going to have to stay and deal with that. But at the same time, they're going to deal with Twig, who's over here again and tries to read the book of where Vote's going to go with the Bifrost there, force him back further, and he still doesn't get a purple buff.
No, not this time around. How many purples has he had this game? Maybe 2 so
One?
far, and he had to steal one of them away. It's been a very tough rolling for the Oni Warriors duo lane. It seems like the Camelot Kings realize how much of an advantage they have, do not want to toss it up to chance, don't want to take that risky play around the Fire Giant, and instead strip away the tier 1 mid tower, reset, make sure they get some vision inside their pockets, and then start to regroup around the Fire Giant itself. And look, 10,000 gold, 19 minutes in. It's pretty hard to argue against. The Camelot Kings are incredibly favored coming into this team fight, and I don't think that the Oni Warriors are in a situation in which they can let it go. Normally, when you're this far down, you say to yourself, all right, we don't really have a chance to defend Fire Giant, but if Fire Giant goes the way of Camelot Kings on all 5 members for free, it should be so easy for them to siege with this draft. You gotta hope the Oni Warriors step up and try and put up a defense.
I think my only concern is who do you try and focus in these team fights? Because I'm looking at player damage on that left-hand side, Myth, and like it's all Kings, you know. Nemesis and Morrigan both way below a freaking Gilgamesh and the Fafnir. Really surprising to me. Something's going to change soon, and as you said, this could be the play to happen. Fire Giant started up, but 2 members are on the left-hand side of the Oni Warriors looking for a tier 2 tower. These 2 over here are just trying to zone, maybe look for a strip away, but I don't think they'll even get an opportunity to. The trade is Fire Giant for a tier 2 tower on the left, and that's also going to be a Pyromancer to try and even things up, but the gold lead 9,000 at this point.
9,000, but with 2 gold caches, make them 3 actually. Towers still available on the Oni Warriors side of the map for the Camelot Kings to pick up and rectify this one slight slip for themselves. Nice stun from Captain Twig to delay the Bifrost. But Vote able to make it out with the minion wave, blocking out some of those auto attacks. For now, the Camelot Kings strategy is pretty simple. Let's go ahead and group up, strip away these tier 2s, and then work our way through these Phoenixes, or even, if you're looking at the map, potentially just start with that left-hand side Phoenix. Variety, though, left isolated, has to play safe.
He does have a tier 1 tower to fall back to, though. Not going to use his Lord of the Afterlife yet. Just drops the tether.
He's
and
fine.
continues to walk away. Gilgamesh now on the
win?
rotation, so Twig will be coming. However, he's walked into Dardes now, who finds a stun. No, he doesn't. Lord of the Afterlife saves the day. The root after the fact gets the beads. And that's the full disengage. All the while, though, Myth, look at mid lane. They're taking a tier 2 as they're all trying to deal with the Osiris that still hasn't died this game.
Yeah, still hasn't died, and it's still 80% HP and growing for now. BMT able to jump in and does so much damage to Neil. Gonna force him back to base, and Cubo fed back to the Shadow Realm.
And next up on the list could be Dardes or Nika as they're trapped inside that ultimate out from Gilgamesh too. Neil Mostar trying to hang around with low health. He's going to be very careful here as the middle Phoenix now falls. Do the Kings fall back or do they go left? They're pinging left-hand side here. So it looks like they're going to go for the back door. This is probably the last window I'd say Warriors could defend with this backdoor attempt. But it is falling relatively quick. And Warriors are taking time to set up. Blinking from Neil forces the Urban Fury to push them back. Walls come through and Camelot Kings are off the Phoenix as the root hits 4.
Nice
but no
tornado.
one's there for Warriors for follow-up damage. Kings still confident with the Fire Giant are walking back in. And there's the Frenzy.
Frenzy's pop, Phoenix falls, and they play it so clinically. The Camelot Kings, with their lead, could have even potentially fought in to the Earthern Fury from Neomar, but says, why? Why risk it? Let's go ahead and disengage, and then get this bird on the retreat, and that's exactly what they do. This gold lead has ballooned so far that I refuse to do the math on it. 2 Phoenixes down, and the Oni Warriors still have to contend with a minute and a half of Fire Giant on the side of the Camelot Kings. Look, this is a 99% or 1% chance for the Oni Warriors, but that 1% is derivative of the lack of anti-heal on the side of Camelot Kings. Without that Ankh pickup, there still is the potential for the Oni Warriors to go for that miracle play around these Terra ults.
I mean, you say that, but when I'm looking at these fights, Smith, I mean, I'm supposed to be the one that, gives them a chance, but I just don't see anyone doing damage, dude. Like, no one on Warriors is doing anything in the fights. We get an ultimate out of Nemesis, but Dardes and Vote just can't get into the fray at the moment. Every time they do, they're exploded instantly off, just forced out again.
Well, maybe if we're lucky, Dardes stealths his way in, stuns someone, does about 50% of his HP bar, and then immediately turns into Terra and just tries to survive. That's going to be the entirety of the strategy for the mid laner on the side of the Warriors. But we need to see more, in particular, from Nika. He's top of the damage charts in the game, I believe. He's had a very good setup from his team so far, who put him in the lead throughout the match, but he has not been able to rotate out or into any of these team fights and create enough space for the rest of his squad to operate. Sure, it's about 20,000 gold at this point, so it's not really a fair expectation to have of him, but if the strategy was to put him ahead, you need to use that.
Well, you saw that Fury go down the left-hand side as the gank attempt on the right-hand side continues. Phoenix down to half health, and Nika's trying to frontline to the best he can, but he won't be able to last long. All 3 Phoenixes now down for Oni Warriors, and Kings have routed this game. It's not been a high kill game at all. It's just been run around the map and take everything at a whim. And for me, Myth, that kind of comes down to Nemesis and Morrigan on the same team. You're not going to have the pressure that a Gilgamesh and obviously this Tiamat are going to bring, especially when the fact the duo lane of Genetics and Netro did a very good job in the early game of stifling anything Neilmar and Vote could get going.
Yeah, Oni Warriors have a very late game slated draft. The only lane from the offset that could have gotten pressure was Nika's, and he did, but unfortunately we're still waiting for Cubo, Fred, Dardes, and Vote to come online. He goes for the Tank Buster build, does Vote, goes for the Kin Size, Executioner, as well as Titan's Bane, so if he is able to make his way towards Variety or towards Genetics inside of these fights, should be able to shred them out pretty easily, especially with the defense shred from the Retribution Ultimate from Nemesis as well. But as you've already highlighted, they've been having such a hard time working their way in, and now Neomar caught out.
Well, he will dash once, but walk right towards Variety, who slows him down some more. Terror applies, and now he's going to force the Urban Fury out too. The stun does connect, and Variety still continuing to whack away as a blink kick from Twig gets the drop kick, and Neilmar is dead. The chase now on for Cubo Freddy, who uses the Retribution and his ultimate to escape, but Big Man Tings takes him down with a leap on in with Tiamat for another kill. 2 dead, and Kings are on the way through the middle lane. Hammer doesn't connect with Vote, however. Dardes forced out to the left-hand side, and Kings don't really care about kills anymore. There's only been 10 in the game, but the Titan's going to fall in game 1 here, and it's back to the drawing board potentially once more for Oni Warriors, unless something crazy happens now. I don't see it happen other than a couple of crits hitting from Netrioid, and Genetics getting the kill on Dardes. 1-0 to the Camelot Kings, Smith, and boy, was that quick and sadly predictable with how the beginning of that game went.
It was a long pace, it felt like to me. 24 minutes had never felt longer, but it's because the Kings were in control for the entirety of that match. If you're the Oni Warriors here, we've said it so many times here in the SPL, if you get blown out like that, might as well go completely back to the drawing board. Don't try and salvage that same strategy. If I were their coach, I'd say maybe look towards a little bit more early game. Try and find a lane that you can play throughout the early to transition yourself a little bit more easily into the mid. But I'm not the coach, I'm just the caster guy.
Well, we'll see what the coaches decide to do after the break, because game 1's down. After the break, we'll break down, show you some replays, and then get ourselves in picks and bans for game 2.
Welcome back, everyone, to the SPL here, Season 8, powered by Alienware, but also, I would say, showcased by SMITE Apparel. You've seen them in the interviews, the nice jerseys that are up there, as well as these beautiful shirts that went up just a couple of weeks ago, or a few weeks ago at this point. Shop.smiteproleague.com. Remember, every team's proceeds goes 100% to the players, so they get that money that comes through. There's also some good, just generic SPLs, Smite Pro League brand merch on there, all very comfortable, all stylish, all great. So make sure you, again, go to shop.smiteproleague.com, and thank you to SMITE Apparel here for being our official merch sponsor. Now, that's going to bring us back to what is, like I said in the interview, we saw a nice Oni Warriors jersey. We were talking to Vote. Vote said, aggro, that the duo lane was going to be very important, and he was right, but not in the way I think he had hoped. And we ended up seeing maybe an unfortunate demise of Vote there a couple of times. A few times he gets out of there. A few times he doesn't quite make it out of there alive. And it seems like things were coming up Netroid pretty often.
Yeah, very often. For whatever reason, we're just seeing massive leads materialize in duo lane today, because we saw it in set 1, now again in set 2. Netroid was able to make it happen here on this On Her, showing that nerfs did not make too much of a difference for this god, that he is still one of those premier picks. Vote just unable to consistently survive in this lane. It was really a similar story to what we saw in games 2 of 3 of the Dragon set, where the backline just got so far behind for the Warriors that it just didn't really matter what the team fights looked like, because they couldn't kill anybody. They couldn't deal enough damage to put threat on the enemy backline or frontline, for that matter. And when that happens, gods like Tiamat in particular end up looking really, really good. She just gets to have complete control of these team fights.
Yeah, it kind of feels like if your first pick gets to be Tiamat, your second pick gets to be Gilgamesh, that just seems like it's pretty good all around. It wasn't a very high kill, high stress scenario game. The only deaths on the side of the Kings was Twig, who, if I go and check that out real fast, I do think, no, he's been beaten. For a while there, Twig was kind of fighting for the top deaths on the team, but Genetics took that over, at least after the last week of play. And, well, with 2 more deaths on his side, Twig maybe trying to play catch-up there. But, again, not a lot of opportunities, it felt like, for the Warriors to open up the gate, and it felt like it was closed a lot in their face. What kind of things, I mean, outside of maybe Tiamat Gilgamesh at the top, what do you change going into picks and bans? Or how do you change game number 2 to try and bring at least some of it back into your favor?
You're definitely switching up the Hunter matchup, whether or not that it's just Heim versus On Her that was the problem. I don't know if you're taking On Her away from Netroid or picking it early for Vote. Maybe switching up the support. I mean, that ends up being pretty impactful in those lanes. We talked so much about the team fight prowess of the draft for the Warriors, but they never got to a point where they could team fight effectively. I was asking for Cursed Onks. Kings didn't get it, and they were right to do so, because they didn't need it, because a 5-on-5 they would have won no matter what. So you got to get off to a better start than the Warriors did in that one.
Well, I'll go ahead and say we're off to the same start here in Picks and Bans.
Yeah.
The first 3 gods are literally note for note. Now 4 gods, note for note from what we had. It was Tsukuyomi, then Yamoja. Okay, they changed things up here for us. Daji, which is a little interesting. I think, and we've had this conversation a little bit about it. I've seen it come up in chat every now and then, in any chat, anytime I see Daji come up. Geb, specifically, as like a good counter to Daji, but she did get some buffs in that 8.5 patch. Is she worth a top 3 ban now?
Maybe not top 3. I do think Daji is really good. I think that more than anything else, Shell losing its block stacks makes this character viable again instantly, because she has so many good tools. She's got guaranteed gap close. She has some of the best burst damage among all assassins late game. She's very, very hard to beat in the assassin 1v1. She punishes gods without CC immunity from level 5 onward. She's got a lot of positives. It's just that Shell completely negated her late game burst, and though she has some pretty tough counters, Get being one of them. I think it's more of a not pass ban from the Kings, but opening up the draft a little bit. This allows them to get Tiamat again. If they so choose, they can go exactly back in that direction. I would be surprised if they went elsewhere. They could go back to the Gilgamesh. Valuing Yamoja over both is surprising, because now the Warriors can just go Tiamat Gilgamesh and have that exact same potent top 2 that the Kings did last game. But maybe the Kings are kind of calling the Warriors bluff here, that they don't have both of those in the God pool quite yet. I don't remember Dardez looking particularly fearsome on the Tiamat last time he played it, but a player of Dardez's caliber, I'm not giving him too many shots on it if you ask me. They're not getting both of them, so I think the Kings made the right read. They guessed that the Warriors really valued Umoja, and that's one of Neil's best gods. So keeping him off of it makes some sense.
And take over this land.
Well, they're not going to opt for the twofer. They're only going to grab one of the quote-unquote top 2 picks, right? The new gods. Tiamat going to be locked in there with a King Arthur. And King Arthur didn't necessarily have a bad game, didn't necessarily have a great game last time around. Very much feels net neutral coming into this game. And with Tiamat being locked in there beside him, it's going to look interesting in the mid lane, right? I'm wondering, well, they answered it before I could even say anything. Where Big Man Tings goes, it's going to be the Ra, and this is something that we've seen, I think, realistically only him go to, and really only him find success on as of late. Last year, I think, kind of helped herald it and showcased how good it could be towards the latter half, but here in Season 8, even with the healing nerfs, Umoja Ra feels like a pretty good heavy sustain even competition.
Yeah, you got a lot of good things going already if you're the Kings when it comes to the team fighting phase. And they go back to the Osiris, most likely for variety, but still a flex pick because we know Twig can take that into the jungle as he has many times in his career. So I like what the Kings have so far. The Serket pickup makes sense. This was a pick that the Kings certainly respected with the picks and bans earlier on. And when you've got this many healers already, shutting down that healing guaranteed with that last breath. Serket also benefiting from Shell leaving the meta. So I think that the Serket pick makes some sense, but it's much more early game. And I think that Fred, throughout this year, not even just in that last game, but throughout this year, has looked a lot less confident in taking those early fights. And again, understandable, playing from bad ping, all that kind of stuff. We get it. But you got to find a way to be more aggressive, as particularly on a pick like Serket. You can't sit on your hands and wait for the game to come to you. You have got to be the aggressor on the Serket pick.
We'll have to see if that comes through. Serket plus Tiamat is kind of maybe where some question marks come up for me. Like, do they mesh well together? Like, Tiamat has a decent early game, definitely transitions into a good late game. Serket, like you said, kind of wants to fight early on. Is she going to have to spend some time potentially over in the duo lane, or can she find a lot of pressure just because it's Raw on the other side in mid, that it doesn't matter necessarily that it's Tiamat or whoever's behind her?
Yeah, you've got great kill pressure no matter where you go on Serket. You can go duo, you can go solo, you can go mid. You can try and 1v1 the enemy jungler. It's one of her strengths as a god is that everyone's on the menu for her in the early stages of the game. So I don't think that there's any concern for me of lack of synergy between Tiamat and Serket. I think that Serket has one of the best single target lockdown CC chains in the game, and you want someone locked down for Tiamat to be able to full channel the one. So I think that you end up actually having some pretty good synergy between the two.
Well, the bans so far, Naja on her, taken away on her after a good performance last time around, makes sense. The Naja, after what we've been seeing specifically out of Twig, makes sense as well, right? And wasn't banned out last time around, but it seems like they're trying to control the combination that could be had with the Naja Ra. Heimdall, Cerberus, banned out on the other side, and for the second time this year, we're getting a Donza Burrow. And I will say, I had to double-check his spelling as I typed it out. We don't get to see him often. I mean, what is it about Donza Burrow that makes him not so great?
It's that he's really, really, really easy to kill if you can get on top of him. It's really, really easy to lock him down and kill him if you can get there first and before he starts channeling that ultimate. Now, if he sees you coming, starts channeling the ultimate, he's able to get a dodge pretty quickly. But if you don't have great ward coverage, you're kind of just sitting duck. The Chiron matchup's one that I'm interested in. I haven't played a whole lot of this matchup over in the duo lane in particular. I wonder if as Danzaburo uses that 3, goes into the cloud, and then comes out the random leaf, does Masterful Shot follow him through that and reveal him in that moment? Because if so, that's a really good matchup for Chiron. You take Danzaburo's only good defensive tool and make it pretty much impossible for him to live. So I love that Chiron pick if that's the way it works out. Either way, I just think Chiron's really solid. Good against the Danza setup, good against the Serket setup. That cleanse is going to be pretty critical here for the Kings.
Plus now Chiron, I mean, Bacchus even being locked into it, that immunity to knockups when he's dashing means he's going to be maybe potentially even safer from this Bacchus in the early game. It's going to be interesting for the Kings, guys. We have a little bit of a remake going on. They're going to be coming in. It's the same drafts. It's just making sure that the lobby is good for all the players out there and making sure things are set up. So it's going to be a little bit, and bear with us as we get through those. As it comes down, Bacchus, look, Bacchus Danza, if you had asked me in a million years, all the numbers I have, all the things I can do to try and figure out a good draft for you, if you had ever asked me to try and find a game where there was going to be a Danzaburo Bacchus lane, I don't think I would have been able to do it for you. It would have been very low on there. Yamoja's on the other side, and I think this is where the Bacchus comes into the conversation. He does have that anti-heal in his burp. Like, it's not something that is really telegraphed that often, right? And it's not something you get to talk about too often. But 50% base anti-heal immediately just from that burp. Do you think that's going to be helpful, hurtful? I mean, he's in the mid 3v3. Theoretically, it'll be there pretty often.
Yeah, you're gonna be feeling it for sure if you're on the Oni Warrior side. Certainly not going to do nothing but help you in these engagements. But don't forget that Yamoja sustain, a lot of it is not healing, it's shielding on the Mending Waters, so that ends up being pretty important. Ra getting a lot of protection, standing inside that Solar Blessing, regardless of the amount of healing that he's receiving. So you have a lot of tools still if you're the Kings, even if the anti-heal comes through on the other side, which I would anticipate it will, as you already highlighted, 50% on that Belch. I'm assuming we'll see a Divine Ruin here for Tiamat. I think she applies it well enough that I'd certainly be willing to buy it. Serket has the 100% anti-heal. Certainly a Contagion or something along the lines will be picked up here by the Oni Warriors. There's enough sustain on the other side to warrant it. I'm looking at what this front line is going to be able to do between Osiris, Fenrir, and Yamoja. That's a lot of CC. It's a lot of chase down potential.
Yeah.
And the Oni Warriors are fairly mobile, but Danzaburo really isn't. So he's going to have a lot of trouble with these Yamoja walls in particular. That's why I was so surprised to see the Danza pick. I think it can really, really struggle up against Yamoja. Interested to see what Genetics is going to be able to do on this pick and how he's going to be able to shut down Foe.
I'm excited and continually interested by this Chiron. Again, you look at it in the patch notes, it seems like almost a small, minuscule line, but it translates into so much more. And after what PandaCat was able to do, going over to something like Netruid, I can very firmly say I've never seen Netruid play Chiron, so this is going to be something that is interesting to me. And also, I think I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure there's only been one Danzaburo game up to this point. Yeah, and that was, I believe, Zapman that played that one. So interesting all around to see what Vote's going to be able to do with this. And when it comes to Clear, I don't even know how to feel about Chiron. Like, I was almost freaked out by the fact that he was getting a lot of kills in that first set. You got to watch it firsthand, what PandaCat was able to do there. Is that something that you can expect out of Netruid in this matchup versus Vote here? Especially since, like you said, depending on how that Masterful Shot interaction goes, it makes it even easier to track down Danzaburo? Or is this going to be maybe a little more slower pace, kind of relaxed Chiron to what we're used to?
I think that if I'm Netruid, if I could get a slight lead, that I could play very aggressively. Danzaburo is one of those characters that has a lot of volatile lane matchups. Once he gets ahead, he has such great space control. His all-in is fantastic. He's got incredible CC. Those let him push his lead very well in that duo lane. But when he falls behind, his lack of mobility, his shorter range, those things kind of come into play a little bit more. And Chiron's able to close that gap so quickly with Giddy Up that Danza could have a lot of trouble with that. So I'm looking for Netruid to kind of feel out the lane. If he falls behind, all of the CC is really telegraphed from Danzaburo. You can use that training exercise cleanse really easily to neutralize it.
Well, it's going to be a really interesting game. I'm really excited to see what the Kings and the Warriors here are going to be able to bring to us. But guys, we're going to have to go to a quick break before we get in here to game number 2. So bear with us. We'll be right back.
Back to the SPL real quick. Just a quick update. One of the players is having a bit of an issue connecting. Having a couple of computer issues there. We're giving him plenty of time to try and get it resolved, though, which means we're going to go to a bit more of an extended wait screen. In the meantime, buy gems, you know, and maybe drop some Amazon Primes. We'll be here with you the whole time until the players are connected back in, and we're good to go. But just to give you an update, it's not a tech issue on our end, but it is a player issue, and we want to make sure we get the best games possible. So we're going to wait patiently, and hopefully, you know, everything works out. But in the meantime, yeah, go buy gems. It'll pay me. I like that. Great. See you later. Bye.
Somewhere in the middle of home, that's where you can find me. We can change the future, you know. That's what you remind me. Your vision.
You're welcome. We got rid of the, you know, the crab wave music for a second or two. Mifflin joining me. We'll be casting the game momentarily. The guys are currently loading into game, just as a heads up, and we'll be back with it. But for the time being, just give you a quick recap of the picks and bans, because I've already forgotten them, if I'm honest. That's the sort of week it's been so far. Miff, what's standing out to you? I mean, the Dansborough is the first thing that's really screaming at me, and then not drafting Tiamat first from Kings is very interesting.
Yeah, I'm surprised the genetics wanted to go immediately towards that Yamoja, but taking a peek at the Kings draft top to bottom, it still screams to me Kings. You're kind of hard-pressed to feel bad about BMT having to fall down to his own Ra. You're going to bring a little bit of sustain as well as long-range damage and objective secure, whereas the Oni Warriors are going to have to bring that fight a little bit more so in the early. It's hard to remember back to when Gore and Aggro were on the desk, but Aggro did highlight that this Circuit needs to get involved incredibly early on, and I think that can be kind of echoed throughout the rest of this draft as well. King Arthur is going to find early pressure. You want to fight around this Bacchus throughout the early as well. Feels like to me the Oni Warriors came in with a completely different identity in Game 2, and it's screaming to me that they don't want to lose out as early as they did in Game 1.
It does feel very W-key-esque, though, this Oni comp, right? Because if you look at the whole team, they're all going to dive in. Like, there's no one on the backline if you really think about it here. The only one that could be there is Tiamat, but she wants to dive in too at points. And I think the best, safest place for Dansborough to be is alongside the rest of his team on the front line by using that rocket to maybe even initiate. It's a bit crazy, but at the same time, if I think that could be the game plan of, like, group up as a ball and try and death ball them. I just don't know if that's going to work against, like, an Osiris, a Yamoja, and, like, a Fenrir for the CC that they're going to bring.
Yeah, so much disengage potential from the Kings. The ultimate from Yamoja, the CC immunity galore. I think, if anything, it's going to be pretty hard to engage.
See, we told you it would be in game. Apologies for the issue, though.
We did
Just so you know, it was a technical difficulty with a player, and, like, obviously there's so many break cases with it. We're generally the ones at fault. I understand that, but hey, I'll be honest and tell you what's gone wrong. Into game we go, though. Myth joining me, and want, as always, the amazing sixth king in this game, I should say, Doug on the Spectator. Let's see how this one starts off, and if we see anything different this time round. At the moment, Myth, looks like we're going to see a very usual start of junglers at the speeds, and Hunters and the mid laners combining for the red buffs.
Yeah, largely standard here. Osiris taking his time, getting out of base, might actually work through the jungle with Captain Twig, kind of reminiscent of what we saw at the very beginning of Season 8. So it's going to take a little bit longer for this Fenrir to hit level 2, but it will have given Variety a slight edge inside the lane as far as experience and gold goes.
Well, at the moment then, Big Man is going to start the red buff between the two of them. Shell picked up this game, though, for genetics. We've not seen much Shell this week so far. I've seen Sunder, I've seen Horrific, I've seen Blink. But Shell this time round. Do you reckon that's going to be a big difference maker with the likes of Last Breath and the likes? Is that the reason we're seeing that a bit more? I mean, it's still going to be impactful. It's still a good relic, you know? It's just not as good as it once was.
Yeah, removes the block stacks for those of you not in the know. And now, once you have that health shield, you're going to take 50% damage from all auto attacks going forward. A little bit of aggression inside the duo lane from the Camelot Kings. That's exactly what we saw back in Game 1 as well. I expect Shell to be pretty standard as a pickup by and large, but it might be, for my money, slightly outshined by Phantom. You're still going to get that damage mitigation, but it's not going to be exclusive to auto attacks. And it lets you walk through the walls. I think Shell might find itself in a little bit of an awkward spot now.
Well, maybe we see a couple more walls coming through. Not too many so far in this game, but all pressure so far for Kings in that duo lane. And Chiron, once again, we've seen a couple of pickups of this so far today, but it is going for that Transcendence once again, Myth. It looks like the ability hunters are going to be going trans and then into Assy a little bit more, especially with those Assy buffs too. I think it's a little bit more tempting between them over there in that duo lane.
A little bit of additional power for the lifesteal item. Transcendence going to afford you a little bit of cooldown as well. And we've already seen what Chiron can do throughout the early. He's going to have a very good time inside this lane up against the Bacchus or even up against Vote. That taunt going to be very hard to land with that training exercise cleanse available to him. But I'm really keeping my eyes on the duo lane insofar as genetics. I want to see how he plays this Yamoja. If he elects to go that aggressive strategy and try and establish pressure throughout the early, easier said than done into a Bacchus, but still definitely possible.
So interesting the transition between the two supports as well, because last game it was Neil Marr that went for the boot thrush, whereas this time it's Genetics that's done the same thing, foregoing the Benevolence so far to just get that extra bit of a level lead going for the time being. No real gank opportunity available for the junglers just yet. Speed buffs now coming up, as it looks like on the left-hand side you can see Cuvo going to start the red buff, give that over to Dardas a little bit earlier on here. Whereas speed buff so far been taken down by Twig, and Big Man getting his own red, as a potential invader purple comes through, but Cuvo is here, and that'll probably force Camelot Kings potentially away and unavailable to steal it away.
Early rotation and adaptation from Cuvo Fred says, all right, look, we're going to make sure our ADC gets at least 2 purple buffs before the 20-minute mark, and so far has done it for his squad. Genetics, though, left high and dry, completely alone.
Oh, good stun coming out from Donis, and the leap in too. Great knock up after the fact. Shell came in for a second, but that was beautiful there, really. Fred did a lot of the work early on, but Donis used pretty much the full kit there of Tiamat to collapse and find the pick onto Genetics. Great start for the Warriors.
It is a nice adaptation from them to find that defense in the early, but Genetics plays so far up there completely alone. Netroid had already disengaged. Twig wasn't there at all. It just felt like a little bit of misplaced aggression from the Camelot Kings that the Warriors were able to stomp out pretty easily. Now gold lead for the first time this set, going to be in favor of the Chaos team. Only Warriors 1,000 up, and it's already reflected in the build slightly. Take a peek at Captain Twig's build in particular. Ninja Tabai taken in that first slot tells me that he's going to go for a very auto attack centric build on this Fenrir. Normally we see Warrior Tabai immediately into Stone Cutting Sword. I wouldn't be surprised if the Stone Cutting Sword is still picked up, but he is going to be sacrificing a little bit of that power.
And what's the reason for the attack speed? Because like Fenrir, I guess Fenrir can go either way, Myth, for the most part, right? Or dance the dance of abilities and autos if he wanted to, right? Like, there's no specific way, but it just feels like very specifically ability-based is the classic way to play him. Whereas this auto-attack version, that could cause some problems, right?
Yeah, with shell nerfs as they are, no more block stacks, auto-attacking getting a little bit better by and large. That additional attack speed also getting made up for in the power department by Seething Howl. Just going to be able to match up a little bit better into Cubo Fred's power as well. I don't hate this build, but I do prefer the Warriors Tabai start just because it makes it so much easier to find those early ganks that Unchained and Brutalized damage going to take a major hit.
Genetics on his own, didn't realize Twig wasn't with him, and now Genetics under pressure once again for a little while, but it looks like the damage could be done there to Cubo Fred, who didn't realize Twig was going to come back around the corner, and Donis just wasn't in range to really make an impact on that invade. I thought Genetics was very greedy with that past him, but end of the day, the European support baits are still a thing, and it seems to still be working out as Tings uses his ult to secure the buff before Neil turns up.
Heads up play from Tings, realizing that Neil Ma's there, has to secure it for himself. That's the exact same pathing we saw from Genetics when he lost First Blood for his team.
Yeah,
he just reprises that exact same path, says, all right, this time it's going to work, and it does because he has teammates around him.
Twig needs some teammates around him right about now as he lands down into Cubo Fred. Gets his ton of damage off ambush to get in range, but Neil's there with a belch to stop that. Now Variety on the Osiris once again. They've been trying to kill him with a 4-man army, but still manages to slip the noose for the time being. Twig, however, did take a tumble there, and that was all really initiated by Nika.
Man, this is all called in your little mini death segment, Hindu. You said they were going to deathball the only Warriors, that is, throughout this match, and so far, it's been a 4-man deathball since the 3 or so minute mark, and it's been working out for them due in large parts of this early aggressive draft that they have. I love seeing Cubo Fred get involved throughout the early. I love seeing Dardes being willing to jump in. It's so hard to reset your mentals off of a loss like we saw in Game 1, but already, the only Warriors have proven that they've bounced back just fine.
Interesting as well in terms of boot choices there for Big Man Tings. I was expecting more Shoes of Focus still, you know, cooldown still important, but it looks like he's gone for the other option there, the Shoes of the Magi, where he's going to get that extra power coming out of those boots too, and a bit of lifesteal as well. So leaning a little bit more on sustain once more, and that's one thing when we go through the builds coming through from Oni Warriors, just how much anti-heal they do build, because there's Ra, there's Yamoja, there's Chiron, and on top of that, there is Fenrir. All of them do have some sustain in their kits that can be nullified by some good anti-healing. Sure, they do have the Bacchus and they do have Circuit, but some items would help them out here.
It really would. Brawler's Speed Stick likely getting looked at by Cubo Fred. I wouldn't be super surprised if we see a Pestilence pickup from both Nika and Neilma, just to make sure that it's constantly being applied. But for now, we can take a little bit more of a macro view at the map, and the Camelot Kings, despite falling off of repeated invade attempts, have been able to secure the neutral objectives. Scorpion on the Fire Giant and Gold Fury side go their way, and they've created POIs on the map to force the Oni Warriors to take the team fight. Netroid using the ultimate, trying to strip away the purple buff. Does seem like he's able to take it away, as we see Vote just go ahead and leave it by the wayside. Interesting usage considering that the neutral objectives are spawned. I wouldn't be too surprised if the Warriors try and force a fight while that ultimate is down.
Well, at the moment, though, the Warriors all on the right-hand side, clearing up their jungle. Blue buff going to go their way. Give that one over to Nika this time round as well. Who, once again, the solo laners, even though Reinforced Greaves did get nerfed in terms of crowd control reduction, we're still seeing them picked up at the moment. Hold that thought, though, because here comes Twig to Vote. Vote going to get connected with, forces the beats, gets on his rocket, and the rocket does not fly away far enough into the walls of Genetics, who will get the kill, and that's a tier 1 tower, less than 8 minutes in the game.
Tier 1 tower and the bees stripped away from Danzaburo. Doesn't have the boots finished just yet either. Vote's going to have a very hard time working his way back into this game, and that's the issue we've had with Danzaburo since day one of his release. If he falls behind, he doesn't have very good comeback mechanics. Sure, you can turn into a leaf and have a little bit of additional movement speed, but it's very easy to track that. Any wall is going to block out his ultimate as well, as we saw from the emoji there inside the duo lane. Vote is going to have a very, very hard time working his way back forward. Maybe taking out that tier 1 tower could have been a slight overstep from the Kings. If the Warriors so choose, they can go ahead and freeze the wave of this tier 2 and allow Vote to farm.
Blink from Twig there, trying to get in range to land that Unchained, but unfortunately didn't time that or accurately predict where Nika was going to be. Belcher mid lane though from Neil, going to get nullified out by Genetics and with Big Man Tings in fray. Still tied at 2-2 as the blue now goes away the Kings. But as you said, there's a slight lead for the Kings at the moment in terms of experience and gold. But there's a collapse coming out from Warriors once again. Neil looking towards Twig, who will force to use the Ragnarok defensively to make sure that Cubo can't get in range.
But the Warriors are settling in the pace that we saw in Game 1. Sure, they're finding solo side pressure, but red and purple being looked at by the Kings.
Well, Vote being looked at by the Kings once again, trying to juke inside the circle, but the
Yikes.
damage just too much from Netriod with that Transcendence now online, not fully stacked. And this could be the doomsday bell being called for Vote. As Neil gets hit by that snipe and Tiggs gets himself a kill. Cubo might be able to turn this around though if he can find one
Good
more
juke.
auto into Twig. But the juke back towards
Oh,
his teammates. No. And Tiggs gets a double kill. It's disaster again for the Warriors. As now Camelot Kings kind of have the map open to themselves with how these plays have gone and down.
The Oni Warriors are doing such a good job of establishing the pressure throughout the early. We saw the adaptations from Fred to make a very early rotation over towards Duo to ensure that those buffs weren't stripped away. But off of that initial rotation, we haven't seen Cubo on the left side of the map again, and instead the Oni Warriors have settled back into that pace that we saw from Game 1. It's this solo side pressure that has been continually attempted by them. You're not going to shut down Variety at this point. It's a tank boot, Stonagaya, Osiris, CC immunity, the ultimate with a leap. You can't really find too much invade attempts over there. Meanwhile, while the Oni Warriors have been trying to strip away blue buff and back camps, the Kings have been keeping Vote down, taking away red buffs and purples. It's just been a real tough run of it in the last couple minutes.
We'll have a little look back at this double kill here that ended up going the way of Big Man Tings. The first kill of the snipe onto Neil. And then after the fact, this was, well, good just juking from Twig. But we got action going on for a second, so we'll come away. And Neil still trying to trade out with Genex, who's gone for this Magi's early. He realizes he's going to need some form of CC immunity, and that's one thing Bacchus doesn't really have. So going for this early on, he forgoes a bit of health. But he does give him the opportunity to not get hit by Ragnarok every time. But now he's getting collapsed on once again. Belchow connects. Where's the rest of the Oni Warriors is the question.
Oh, no.
Nowhere to be found. And it's Vote and Neil trying to deal with 4 members of the Kings on this left-hand side. As Warriors was trying to strip away the right jungle. Vote's already dead. And Neil's kind of watching on as the red buff now getting taken down too. And like you said, the Kings still rolling on as a 4-man unit here.
Neilma left isolated, forced to use the flop over the wall. Big Man Tings forced to use his own beads for the CC immunity ultimate. Not quite on the mark, but damage output certainly there. The Camelot Kings can go ahead and fall back to the Gold Fury and utilize the sustain. Not only is it the emoji heals, but is the raw heals as well. Captain Twig can tank up with a Seething Howl, but Genetics left isolated might fall.
He might fall, but he's got enough Omni to get away again one more time if he needs to, but the turnaround is fair play, and Genetics gets the kill on Neil for the second time. And meanwhile, on the right-hand side is Variety under pressure, but he's still alive for the time being. Lord of the Afterlife away, ambushing from Cubo Fred. The damage is good, but he's still not enough. Can Nika find him? No, he can't! He misses the last shot with King Arthur, and Variety lives again. Holy moly, just give him a Cyrus every game if this is going to be the case that he'll live all the time. Jeez.
I mean, it's nuts that the Warriors are doing it again. I mean, I made this exact same analysis just, what, 2 minutes ago? The Warriors are putting so much emphasis on this solo lane, and the Kings are getting away with just highway murder on the left-hand side of the map. They can do whatever they want. It's just ridiculous that the Warriors are allowing these fights to go the way of the Kings, not only with a numbers advantage, but now the gold advantage as well. The Kings could have gone for gold free instead, elect to take the fight yet again. We need to see Cubo Fred rotate over to these duo side fights. That's where the action is, and that's where we need to utilize this Circuit in the early.
I mean, in a way of thinking about it, Myth, though, I mean, you know, you look at how this is playing out so far. We've got four-level differential in that duo lane between the supports and the hunters overall, whereas at least Nika's still even, right? So trying to play through Nika makes sense, but you're going against this Osiris that is pretty much unkillable.
Yeah, I mean, allocating your jungler's resources for the last 13 minutes to make sure that Nika stays even doesn't feel like a good allocation of resources to me. Camelot Kings able to strip away the Pyromancer now, can look towards the Gold Fury without having to worry about any neutral objectives going down on the opposite side of the map. The Oni Warriors have started to reprise that strategy that worked for them in the first 2 minutes, this grouping of Kuvo, Fred, Nilma, and Dardas. Expect them to stick close together because that's the core of their team fight.
Yeah, Oni Warriors just need to kind of play safe for a minute or two, give up a couple of buffs, give up even more of the jungle if need be, and just continue to farm to try and just nullify a bit of the pressure. At least get their secondary relics online, which would be a nice little power spike for themselves. And you can see Niels trying to hover around this Gold Fury that's now available, and it looks like Kings are starting this one up. Votes nearby. Collapse in all angles from Oni Warriors, but they're a bit split. Ragnarok used by Twig, looking towards Vote. Vote picks up for a second, forced the beads away. Fury reset again as the snipes come through from Chiron. Dardas now leaping in, trying to cause some damage. Genetics is kind of low after the knock-up, but the rocket from Vote is good. But Big Man Tiggs with a huge snipe on Cubo. Fred, make sure he won't survive. A 1-for-1 exchange. Gold Fury still stands. And that comes up pretty well again, I would say, for Camelot Kings, because they lose a support for a jungler. Not too bad.
Not too bad, but any small win that the Warriors are able to get inside of these team fights, I think, is going to be a little bit more impactful for them. They are the underdogs at this point now, 2,000 gold down, and just struggling in the XP department as well. ADC able to catch up a little bit there. Vote was 2 or 3 levels down coming to that fight, now able to close it up to just 1. But what's the difference in that engagement? What makes it go the Oni Warriors' way even slightly? It's the presence of Kuvo Fred. Sure, he does fall, but he creates space for his team. He makes sure Vote isn't getting dove for free, and it does create this scenario where the Oni Warrior is able to fight back in. We need to see more of that. It's a great adaptation here 15 minutes in, and if they're able to win out in the next team fight cleanly, pick up a gold tree, we're looking at a completely even match.
He'll be looked at for a second there. Just trying to hold on to his Magi's the best he can. Keep that available for him for this next potential gold Fury, because I don't think Kings are necessarily done here with this gold. They've got better clear, they've got better secure with this Ra too, I would say, up against this one. And Niels now trying to get into the pit again. Twig's looking towards him, picks up Dardas. Dardas forced to beads. Snipes coming through from Chiron as the snipe comes through from Ra too. Kings do get the gold Fury and walk away. Wasn't that clean though, to be honest, with how they secured that one, but at the same time, they get it all the same.
Yeah, luckily the zone was pretty clean from the Kings because the confirmation not quite there. Now the Oni Warriors are stuck in a pretty hard spot. They don't want to group up and try and strip away towers. Instead, they kind of have to rest on their laurels for the next couple of minutes, wait for this Pyromancer to respawn, and potentially take a team fight there. It's tough going. It just feels like so far in this set, the Camelot Kings have been able to slowly and methodically strip away farm on the map, be it through invades or neutral objectives, to create these leads that make it that much easier for them to take these team fights in a mid to late game. This is an interesting strategy from the Warriors. Red buff invade attempt or potentially a gank.
Could be a gank, but where is everybody else? Looks like Netrod may have spotted Vote there around the corner. I guess not. Vote's going to walk around into 2. Looks for the taunt, doesn't really find it. Looks to secure the buff. Is the red buff also being taken away?
Oh my
Leaping
God.
from Kubo into the backline on the right side, though. He's looking towards Netrod, who escapes for the time being. Vote, a different story. Kubo does finally get Netrod as Twig jumps on in, gets the Ragnarok off, brings him towards Dardas, and Dardas in trouble where Big Man Tings is waiting. Double kill for Twig, and the red buff is still alive.
It sure is. Neilbot now left isolated, tries to use the burp to peel out for Kuvo Fred, and does get his teammate out of there. Lickety split. Nika, meanwhile, on the other end, tries to rotate in, catches Variety's hands for his troubles. That's a tough one. The Oni Warriors, I liked where their strategy was. Okay, if someone steps up to this red buff, we're going to instantly kill them, take the buff, and try and disengage. But the Camelot Kings were privy to it, group up on the Scorpion, and then immediately win the fight. Tier 1 tower going to fall down as well. Now 3,000 gold in the lead is about where they were where they started this, but it just feels like so far the Kings have been in complete control.
Yeah, you can see the experience in gold starting to dip a little bit there in favor of Kings. Sorry, Camelot Oni Warriors getting back into this one. But once again, just one team fight later, one little skirmish around that red buff. and it's a different story. There's nothing worse feeling, Myth, than like turning around and realizing both your carries are dead, your mid laner and your duo laner, and you're like, well, there's not much we can do here other than try and survive and limp away to fight again. As right hand side now, Nika looking at this blue, needs to be a little bit careful because Twig is hovering around this right hand side as well. And really, that's all Kings have to worry about for the time being, Myth, is this right-hand side of the map, you know? Fire Giants up, Tier 1 tower on the right-hand side still standing. I'm expecting to see a bit more attention paid this way.
And it's the first time, really, we've seen Twig make a rotation over towards this solo side. He's only got his eyes on the neutral objectives. Pyromancer gonna get picked up again. Onywhere should have the timer on this one, have been able to pick it up for themselves, but last time around, it was the Kings who secure it, and this time around, it looks like it's gonna be the exact same scenario. Kings take the Pyro, and now keep their eyes towards that greater Scorpion. The only Warriors has been slow on the rotation towards these neutral objectives.
I was going to say, it was a funny earlier on because the dual lane was like 4 levels behind. They've kind of closed that to 2, but then there's a gap developing elsewhere. Nika getting ganked here on this right-hand side. However, buying a bit of time for his team to help out. And they're helping out by taking out Cubo. Fred round the corner. Tig's looking for the snipe, won't find it. Nika's still alive, though. Being chased down by Variety. It's in the jungle. Twig still having to deal with Cubo. Cubo does get his ultimate to survive. And now Tig's looking for the pick onto Nika. Great knockback coming through from Genetics that sets up Variety for a kill. What's going on the left-hand side, though? Rocket Man's coming in from Vote, looking towards Netroid. TP now from Variety will come into play as Variety all 3 snipes and has to Aegis the masterful shot too. The chase is on potentially, but he will escape, and it's Neil now the focus of attention instead. Will he fall down to the tether? The stun connects, and Neil is going to get away with a flop. I don't know why Netroid left that kill. Netroid dropped the ball there for me. But luckily enough, Neil stuck around instead of walking back to tier 2. Calamity of craziness, Myth. Calamity.
What an intelligent play and pickup from the Camelot Kings. That teleport pickup allows them to create this emphasis on the right-hand side, and it's very clear an expectation that the Warriors are going to try and do something on the duo. If you see a 4-man grouping inside a solo, immediately teleports over, turns a 2v1 into a 2v2. Netroid, as you said, may have dropped the ball a little bit, not taking out that kill, but trusts that Variety, who had made the hero play, can finish it up for himself, and he absolutely does. The Camelot Kings are playing this map so well.
But what can they do next is a real question, because only Warriors, like at this moment in time, 6,000 gold down, all their tier 1 towers are taken. The split push options are available with a little bit of help from those Tiamat minions that could come into play to try and get some pressure in these lanes. But I do like the fact we're seeing Oni scrap still. You know what I mean, Myth? They are still trying to scrap, they are still trying to go at it, but they're falling further behind as time goes on now. Level 20s being reached on a lot of members of the Kings, and that spells doom as well, because that starting item can then get upgraded, and we all know those start item upgrades, very impactful with the state of play.
They really are, but now the Oni Warriors are doing better than they were in Game 1. This lead isn't as large as it was. Nika's getting involved a little bit earlier on. They've got some anti-heal available from this Pestilence. This is a fight that needs to go the way of the Warriors if you are a Warriors fan, and so far, starting off the Camelot King's foot.
A lot of focus on Nika, but Nika stands tall and continues to survive as Neil Mar below half health at the same time. Taking a long time to take on this Primal Fury, though, waiting for the window, and it will be taken by the Warriors and stripping away. Can they get away against the question, though? The walls crush in there from Genetics, and Cubo Fred has no escape route, so has to ult back into the fight, find time for the Deathbane, and continue to run, and he will survive for the time being. No, he is not, because the Lord of the After will follow him. Another kill. But it does get them the Fury, which in my eyes is a pretty good trade from Oni Warriors' point of view.
Yeah, Cubo Fred blinks forward, uses the first ability, and steals away the objective. Huge play for the Warriors to make sure that that goal doesn't leak even further in favor of the Camelot Kings. But with 30 seconds left on this circuit, this could be an opportunity for the Kings to look towards the Fire Giant.
Well, as I go into the fire, let's check this steal out. Was it the actual Deathbane that came through and stole this, or did he kiss it as well? I wasn't sure. It looked like just a Deathbane. It was. Okay. In, out, shake it all about, no problem. I mean, he still dies for it, but it was a good play overall there, Myth, to find a window, and now we're on this Fire Giant.
10 seconds left on Circuit's respawn. Yoma and Nika, the only ones in range for the defense. Keep your eyes on Twig. Could be the one to start off this fight, but now it just seems like the Camelot Kings are willing to leave it up to a secure battle. There's the reset.
And the stun attempt towards Big Man Sings, who finds the sniper, hits Vote for 1,000 damage, but Vote's still alive for the time being. Different story for Neil, though, who ate a ton of damage and gets ended by Netroid there. And that looks like the right sort of play for me, Myth, from Kings. Pull the Fire Giant, draw them in, and then pick them apart with your level lead. And here we go again for round 2.
Just keep using that sustain, and that's exactly what they're doing. Twig trying to play goaltender, doesn't want to see that exact same thing we saw on the Gold Fury Cubo Fred. We're going to be kept in combat here as Variety, left alone, falls low.
Yeah, he does fall low, but not low enough just yet. The Fire Giant still falling down and will go to Kings now. And Twig's just been buying time, keeping Cubo in check. And the collapse comes through. Oni Warriors on the run away. I'm telling a lie, they're all in there. The W key, but Vote is dead. Netroid managed to get hold of Doris. Tell a lie, Vote got a kill there. And he's boxing out Variety well. The Dansper is standing up. But I don't know how much longer he can hold on for. Because Netroid and Genetics are now on the chase too. And it's going to be Dans that's going to be left on this right-hand side if they do collapse.
He is able to get into the Rocket Raccoon, is able to make his way out of there. Captain Twig using the CC immunity to avoid the stun. He wants it.
And then Vote will fall down. I could just see that one coming, red like a book. And with that, the tier 2 tower on the right side being down, they could look for a Phoenix, but instead they're going to fall back, strip the jungle. And this is looking awkward if you're an Oni Warriors fan right now trying to get back into this game. You can see they're having a hard time competing with what Kings are doing and have done so far this set.
And it's going to become even harder now that it simplifies on the Phoenix defense. Sure, the Kings have 2 tier 2 towers. They're going to have to work through first, but it should be light work. 8,000 gold up, 13,000 experience. Should be able to strip those away relatively easily. I got to highlight BMT, man. It's not often the mid laner's the top of the damage charts ever, especially on a guy that has fallen in and out of the meta like Raw. Yeah, this guy is playing incredibly well right now. Look, when it happens, and it very seldom does, I will give mid laners credit. It's not often that they're the ones making those huge plays, and this time around it is big man Tings. He is looking so good for his team. I think he's maybe missed 2 ultimates this entire 24 minutes. Dude's looking incredibly strong.
Well, look at this though, King's going to group up with 4 on the left-hand side, and they do have teleport available once it's back up from Variety to continue to stop the split push that Oni Warriors were kind of looking down that right-hand side. Tier 2 now falls. And the question is, where do Camelot Kings go next? Would you like to see him go for a Phoenix here, Myth? Or would you rather see him go for the safer option of the tower in mid?
If Variety's able to stop these backs, and so far he has, yeah, get into that Phoenix and do it quickly.
And here we go, blink on him, Ragnarok, and say goodbye to Dansborough. He's already dead. Big man takes credit for the kill. The walls did come down from Genetics there for a second, but not enough to stop anything from Oni Warriors doing something about that Phoenix falling. And King still chasing, get a stun on Nika. Collapse onto Nika, not the easiest target to bring down, but they will force him to use his ultimate defensively there, back towards the safety of his fountain. Camelot Kings go back towards the mid lane, and now Warriors really up against it with that left-hand Phoenix being down. Something has to happen soon, otherwise the writing's on the wall.
Yeah, you can never accuse the Camelot Kings of having a devil-may-care attitude. They are going to cross all their T's and dot their I's. Does not matter how long it takes. Variety zones off 4 members on his own, and for his troubles, loses about 5% of his HP bar. Tier 2 tower falls down easily, and a nice engage from Netroid to force out Dardes.
Yeah, Dodd is forced back as well. He did just leap there away from Variety too. Now the middle Phoenix exposed. No minions here just yet though. Twig zoning away to the best of his ability. Cubo just waiting, lurking, hoping for a window. And meanwhile that Ragnarok didn't really find a target from Twig. He's just a dog without a bone. Cubo Fred though does get hold of Raw, but Twig got a hold of Neil more in the fight. Now Twig looking towards Nika one more time. As Variety takes out Cubo Fred after the last breath. We'll still see Twig live in the back of that fight. Mid Phoenix falls down, and it's only Dardes, Nika and Vote left standing. But the damage has been done. 2 Phoenixes down, and only 1 more remains.
Yeah, Captain Twig had maybe 50 HP at the end of that fight. Yeah, he's full health again already. That sustain from Yamoja, the Seething Howl, as well as Ra, gonna make it that much easier to walk into the Titan room.
We mentioned anti-heal, and like there's a Divine Ruin, there's a Pestilence, but there's not much more than that, and it's still not going to be enough, I think, even if there was the case. Camelot Kings into the throne room and in to take game 2. In this best of 3 up against Oni Warriors, and push themselves into a tied second position for the time being, alongside the Dragons, with how this is played out there. That wasn't too surprising with the 2 teams we've seen so far in the league, Myth. But at the same time, like, I think you expected a bit more from Oni Warriors there. They really got lost in the sauce today.
They did. It felt like to me the Warriors came in with the strategy of, okay, we're going to jam it down solo lane, and that's where we're going to find our lead. And it just does not pan out that way for them this time around. In game 1, they were able to get Nika about 1 or 1.5 levels in the lead, but he was never able to rotate out and spread the wealth to his team. In game 2, they kept jamming it down solo, and Nika came out ahead, or even rather. So instead, maybe we're going to need to see a little bit more adaptations on the fly from this team to adjust to the pressure that the Jade Dragons are going to bring to the duo lane that they haven't in the past, or the Camelot Kings have in this exact set. It just needs to be a little bit more adaptability from the Oni Warriors.
I mean, who would have thunk dual lane pressure being the focal point of both these sets today, hey? Well, with that, we're going to take a break, and after the break, we'll break it down and get you an interview with one of the winning members of the Camelot Kings. Stay tuned.
That's right, shop.smiteproleague.com in order to get yourself some Insight apparel merchandise. Not just those jerseys, which, by the way, are customizable to put your tag on the back, whatever role logo you want, as well as whichever team you want. Obviously, that would be able to come through. You can customize it pretty much the way you would want it, the way you would have it if you were able to play for one of these teams. Proceeds go directly to the teams as well, so it's a win-win for everybody involved. Shop.smiteproleague.com, and even if you're not interested in jerseys, there's some shirts there, Aggro, and you can have something like a nice little graphic tee that goes your way. Either way, speaking of nice, well, I would maybe say short and sweet more than I would say nice set overall. Kings, I mean, for 5 minutes, it looks like the Warriors are going to run the show for this one. And then for 20 minutes, it looks like the Kings are absolutely going to run this one. They didn't let it slip up pretty much at all once they regained control.
Man, poor Vote in this set, dude. He kind of just got gunned down from
bullied.
minute one of game one. He got, I can probably count on one hand the amount of purple buffs my man's got this set, because he did not get a lot of them. It was constant pressure there from the Kings.
Did he say something mean in the interview? Like, did I miss something?
I don't think so.
I mean, something must have happened between Vote and the members of the Kings, because it seems like they had some really bad blood set out for him.
Based on the gameplay, you could say that way, because it really was that dominant from them playing around that side of the map consistently, not letting him breathe at all, and really facilitating Netrioid on this pick.
Here.
Yeah, Vote gets dove, and this is what I'm talking about. What does Danza do against Yamoja? Cries? Complaints? That's about all I got for you, because otherwise it's not going to have a whole lot of good times. And look, it wasn't just Netrioid leveraging that lead, though of course he did that very well. It was Twig and Tings, again, just playing really well together, playing off each other very, very nicely, and making plays happen. This Fenrir pick looked fantastic for Twig. This is the exact type of pick that I think he's best at. These carries that can facilitate at the same time, that can transition into a tankier build. He loves going for it. He loves picking up the Pridwin on this god, and it just fits his playstyle so well, and the way the Kings play around him, I think, makes so much sense.
It is not a day. This time more kills on the board, but not exactly the KDAs you'd like to see if you're a Warriors fan. A 2-0 here for the Kings. Makes things a lot more interesting at the top of the standings. Makes things a lot more interesting going into tomorrow still in that conversation to potentially have that three-way tie. But this one, like you said, from top to bottom, really clean. 19,000 for Variety. Netroid in terms of damage. 23k there from Tings. But I actually give a lot of the credit, as you had highlighted, and I think as the highlight showcased, over to Twig. A very big amount of presence. Of course, that beautiful juke in order to make sure that Cuvo died, and he did not, with a little bit of help from Tings there. And I believe Netroid had rotated into that one. A lot of fun to watch out of the Kings here, Aggro, and it just makes me have a lot more, I want to say, willingness to support them. I think, like, coming into the beginning of this league, I did not know what to expect out of this team, and so far they've done nothing but prove themselves. In fact, we even have Twig standing by to talk about this win and the way that things have been going for the Kings.
We do indeed. I'm joined now by Captain Twig. Twig, congratulations first of all on the victory today. For your liking, like, how did that go today? Was it as expected, or were you expecting more of a difficult matchup against other Europeans?
Exactly how I expected. I kind of just think we're gonna run over teams like them, Valkyries, Scarabs. I think we just have really good teamwork, and on game day we always show up. So. We're just super confident in sets like these.
I was going to say, like, as a team, in terms of chemistry, Twig, like, I think you guys, like, on paper, like, I felt like you guys would have good chemistry this year, but it would take time to build on that. But it doesn't look like that's been the case at all. It looks like you guys are kind of taking a duck to water. Have you been surprised about how quickly you've managed to, like, gather some momentum where you now find yourself, tied for second spot so far today?
Absolutely surprised. I'm pretty... shocked and happy with how quick, specifically our dual lane kind of progressed. It's Netroid and Genetics haven't been in the same continent before, so they just came in. Genetics is a rookie to the SBL, kind of played a couple months last year, but they are owning. And today, I mean, I bet Vote didn't feel like they were new to the dual lane at all.
Yeah. What was with the Vote focus? I mean, we've seen the tweets. Other people have been saying, was there a reason? Did Vote offend you? Could you not understand what he was saying on the interview, so you all got angry? I don't know. What was it? Like, why was there so much focus?
You just gotta take down the goat. You know, he's a great player, but so you got to shut him down.
That's a nice way of putting it. I like that one, Twig. Last real question for you, though. You guys are technically not tied for second place yet. You are relying on the Bolts beating, I believe, Titans tomorrow, and that will give you a three-way tie. Is getting that second seed really important to you? Do you think that's going to be a big impact for you guys if you don't get second seed and get to draw the groups? Or are you happy to just let it fall as it may?
We're happy to fall as it may. Mentally, for me, it's more about the statement that we came in, we're a completely new team, came second. I think that means a lot to me mentally, and I think it means a lot to the rest of us that we're just a new team, completely hadn't had much of a past together as players, and I think it's just great to be where we are, that we've won so many games and only dropped 2 games in the group stages.
Well, Twig, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck in the group stage as well. Exciting to see how things progress now with you guys, because you're kind of making a name for yourselves, and that means you're going to get a target on your back pretty quick, if I'm honest. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you.
With that, we'll head back to the desk to close things out.
That's exactly right. We're going to be in an interesting segment of days here, Aggro, as time's moving forward. And yes, Bellini, I'll get to you in just a second, I promise. As time moves forward, specifically tomorrow, there's a good chance that we might run into what is going to be an interesting 3-way tie. The Titans versus the Bolts. If the Bolts win, we'll have the Bolts who beat the Dragons who beat the Kings, and the Kings who beat the Bolts all tied for second. So they'll have to do some merry-go-round and games that we'd have to broadcast afterward to figure out who is the true number 2 to be able to go up there. Of course, the Leviathans actually have an interesting matchup. I was a little more excited for this a few weeks ago, just because it was off the hot hand that the Scarabs had dealt us when they beat the Dragons, but I'm still interested to see the Scarabs, a team that seemingly out of nowhere, but realistically just through hard work and preparation, beat the Dragons, how they can fare against the Atlantis Leviathans. The only time that they have lost so far has been to the Dragons. Either of those matches standing out to you so far?
I mean, obviously the Bolts setup is so important for the seeding and that kind of stuff, and the Titans, I think, have really been on the up, so I'm excited to see what the Titans are going to bring. But you're right to call out that Scarabs matchup. I mean, the Leviathans cannot go into that set expecting an easy win, because clearly the Scarabs are not an easy win. They are a team that you got to come in and prep for and ready for what they're going to throw at you. They're a fun team to watch right now.
It's going to make things a little more complicated tomorrow if they're able to find a win. It'll make things really fun, though, for the league as a whole. It kind of feels weird to know that there's not a group stage when that draft comes through and the teams choose the other teams. I don't know that there's anybody that you really want to pick to be on your side or to want to have on your side. Either way, that'll be an interesting one tomorrow. That draft is tomorrow after the games. Of course, we have to play those to figure out what's going to happen. Make sure you tune in tomorrow, 1 p.m., same time, same place. We'll see you then.
Peaches.